The gunshot echoed through Willow Creek like thunder in summer, causing Katherine Aldridge to drop the stack of freshly laundered sheets on the dusty boardwalk. It was 1876, and in this corner of Wyoming Territory, the promise of a better life hung as precariously as the half-built buildings that lined the town's single street. Miss Aldridge, Mrs. Hemsworth clutched her chest dramatically. That's the third shooting this month. When will you accept that your dreams for this town are just that, dreams? Katherine gathered the now soiled linens, her jaw set in determination. When there's no more breath in my body, Mrs. Hemsworth. The older woman's face crinkled with a mixture of pity and exasperation. They'll bury you with those dreams, girl. No railway is coming to save Willow Creek. No respectable families will settle here. And certainly no bank will ever lend money to a woman, especially one foolish enough to believe in ghost stories about prosperity. Katherine straightened her back and clutched the sheets tighter. At 26, she'd heard it all before. Ever since her father died, leaving her nothing but debts and the dilapidated hotel she now ran, the townsfolk had taken to calling her Hopeful Katherine, not as a compliment, but with the same tone they might use for Crazy Katherine. My father believed in this town, she replied evenly. And I intend to honor that belief. Mrs. Hemsworth shook her head. Your father was a dreamer too. Look where that got him. Katherine bit her tongue and continued toward her hotel. The Willow Creek Inn was the largest building in town, 2 full stories of weathered wood and peeling paint. It had been magnificent once, when the rumors of gold in the nearby hills had brought a rush of prospectors. But the gold had been a myth. The prospectors had left, and now only the occasional traveler, cattle driver, or those running from something stayed at her establishment. Inside, Katherine's younger sister Leela was sweeping the dining room floor. At 18, Leela had Katherine's same auburn hair but none of her stubborn determination. I heard the shot, Leela said without looking up. Another fight at Mulrooney's. Where else? Katherine replied, setting the dirty sheets on a chair. I'll have to rewash these. Why bother? Nobody's coming anyway. Leela leaned on her broom. Katie, Mr. Weber offered again to buy the hotel, said he'd give us enough to get to Denver. We could start over somewhere real. Katherine's green eyes flashed. This is real, Leela, and it will be more than real when the railway survey team arrives next month. Leela laughed bitterly. If they arrive, that's what you said last year and the year before. This time is different, Katherine insisted. I received confirmation from the Western Pacific office. A letter can say anything, Leela retorted. Until I see men with surveying equipment, I'll believe what everyone else does, that my sister is the biggest fool in Wyoming Territory. Katherine was saved from responding by the jingling of the bell above the front door. Both women turned, expecting to see the town drunk seeking a meal on credit, but instead stood a stranger. He was tall and lean, dust coating his dark clothes and wide-brimmed hat. A day's worth of stubble darkened his jaw, and piercing blue eyes surveyed the room with calm assessment. Ladies, he said, removing his hat to reveal hair the color of wheat. I'm looking for lodging. Katherine quickly moved forward, professional smile in place. Of course, sir. We have several rooms available. Almost all rooms, actually, but he didn't need to know that. Just need one. Quietest you've got, if possible. His voice carried the slight drawl of Texas. May I ask how long you'll be staying, Mr. Quentin Blackburn, and I'm not entirely sure. He set his saddlebags on the floor. I'm here on business that might take some time. Katherine's heart quickened. Could he be an advance scout for the railway, or perhaps an investor looking for opportunity? Well, Mr. Blackburn, we're pleased to have you. I'm Katherine Aldridge, proprietress of the Willow Creek Inn, and this is my sister Leela. The man nodded politely to them both. "Pleased to meet you. Been riding hard from Cheyenne. Any chance of a hot meal to go with that room?" "Of course," Katherine said brightly. "Leela, would you please show Mr. Blackburn to room 3 while I prepare something from the kitchen?" As Leela led the stranger upstairs, Katherine hurried to the kitchen, mind racing. A paying guest was rare enough to celebrate, but one who might stay for an extended period was even better. Perhaps her luck was finally changing. In the kitchen, Katherine stoked the fire in the stove and began preparing a simple but hearty stew from the provisions she'd been saving. As she worked, she could hear the low murmur of voices from upstairs, Leela's light laugh responding to something the stranger had said. When Leela returned, her cheeks were flushed. "He's washing up. Says he'll be down shortly." "What did he say about his business here?" Katherine asked, trying to sound casual. Leela shrugged. "Not much. Asked about the town, who owns what. Seemed particularly interested in the land north of town toward the ridge." Katherine's pulse quickened again. The ridge was precisely where the railway would need to cut through if it came to Willow Creek. "Did you tell him about the survey team coming?" Leela rolled her eyes. "No, Katie. I didn't want to make us sound desperate." "It's not desperation, it's information," Katherine corrected, but let the matter drop as heavy footsteps descended the stairs. Quentin Blackburn had cleaned up well. With the trail dust gone, Katherine could see he was younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps 30 or so. His face was weathered from sun and wind, but handsome in a rugged way that made her suddenly aware of her work-worn hands and simple dress. "Something smells mighty fine, Miss Aldridge," he said, taking a seat at the table she'd hastily set. "Just a simple stew and biscuits," she replied, placing the food before him. "Would you care for coffee? That would be most welcome." He nodded, then looked around the empty dining room. "Quiet establishment you have here." Katherine forced a smile. "It's early in the season yet." He took a bite of stew, nodding appreciatively. "This is excellent. You've got talent in the kitchen." "Thank you, Mr. Blackburn." He gestured to the chair opposite him. "Please join me if you're not too busy and call me Quentin." Katherine hesitated, then sat down, pouring herself a small cup of coffee. "May I ask what brings you to Willow Creek? We don't get many visitors who aren't passing through." Quentin chewed thoughtfully before answering. "I'm looking into land opportunities. I represent some interests back east who might be interested in developing this region." Katherine's heart leapt, but she maintained her composure. "Is that so? What sort of development?" "That depends on what I find." His blue eyes studied her face. "I understand there might be a railway survey happening soon." Katherine couldn't hide her surprise. "How did you hear about that?" A small smile played at the corner of his mouth. "I make it my business to know things before others do. It's how I've stayed alive and successful." "Well, you heard correctly. The Western Pacific is sending a survey team next month to assess the viability of a route through here. And you believe they'll recommend it?" His tone wasn't mocking, merely curious. "I do. The passage through the ridge is the most direct route to connect the northern settlements. My father mapped it years ago." Quentin nodded slowly. "Your father sounds like a forward-thinking man." "He was," Katherine said softly. "Everyone thought he was a fool too. And yet here you are, carrying on his vision." Quentin took a sip of coffee. "That takes courage." Katherine felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the stove. It had been a long time since anyone had spoken of her determination as anything but foolishness. "Most people here would use a different word for it," she admitted. "Most people lack imagination, Miss Aldridge." His eyes held hers for a moment longer than necessary. "I'd like to see this ridge passage, if you wouldn't mind showing me tomorrow." "I'd be happy to," Katherine replied, perhaps too quickly. "And please call me Katherine." The next morning dawned clear and bright, the kind of spring day that made the harsh Wyoming winters seem like a distant memory. Katherine dressed with more care than usual, selecting her least faded riding skirt and a blouse that brought out the green in her eyes. Quentin was already in the dining room when she came down, conversing easily with Leela as she served him breakfast. He stood when Katherine entered. "Good morning," he said. "Your sister tells me you're quite the horsewoman." Katherine shot Leela a look. "I manage well enough. Are you ready to see the ridge after breakfast?" Looking forward to it. They set out an hour later, Katherine leading the way on her sturdy mare Penny. Quentin rode a magnificent buckskin gelding that he introduced as Samson. "He's beautiful," Katherine remarked as they left town behind. "Thoroughbred stock. Half. His dam was a Mustang gave him endurance to match his speed." Quentin patted the horse's neck affectionately. "We've covered a lot of ground together. You travel extensively for your work. I go where opportunity leads me." He glanced at her. "Though I admit I'm selective about where I linger." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the landscape opening up around them. The ridge rose to their north, a dark line against the blue sky. As they drew closer, Katherine felt the familiar surge of excitement she always experienced when approaching this place. "My father brought me here when I was 12, she said as they began to climb the gentle slope. "He showed me how the land funneled naturally to this point, how a railway would have no choice but to come through here if it wanted the most efficient route." Quentin surveyed the terrain with a practiced eye. He wasn't wrong. The grade is manageable, the rock looks workable. A tunnel here would save miles of track compared to going around. Hope surged in Katherine's chest. "That's exactly what my father said." They dismounted at the crest of the ridge, tethering the horses to a scrubby pine. Katherine led Quentin to a flat rock outcropping that offered a panoramic view of the valley below, with Willow Creek a tiny collection of buildings in the distance. "This is where I come when I need perspective," she admitted. "When the doubts get too loud." Quentin stood beside her, close enough that she could smell leather and soap. "Do they get loud often?" "The doubts," Katherine sighed. "Every day. Everyone in town thinks I'm throwing away my youth and Leela's future on a dream that will never materialize. Some days I wonder if they're right." "And yet you keep going." She turned to face him. "What choice do I have? Give up? Sell the hotel for a pittance and admit defeat? That's not who I am." Quentin studied her face for a long moment. "No, I don't believe it is." Something in his gaze made Katherine's breath catch. She turned away, gesturing toward the valley. "From here you can see how the railway would naturally continue west. My father had it all planned out. Your father must have been quite a man." "He was. Everyone respected him, even when they thought his ideas were too grand." Her voice softened. "After he died, that respect didn't extend to me. A woman with ambition is just a foolish dreamer, apparently." "Some of the wisest people I've known have been dreamers," Quentin said. "Especially women. They see possibilities that others miss." They spent the rest of the morning exploring the ridge, with Katherine pointing out the natural features that made it ideal for the railway. Quentin asked intelligent questions, making notes in a small leather-bound book. As they rode back to town, Katherine felt lighter than she had in months. Someone finally understood, finally saw the potential she'd been defending for years. "Thank you for today," she said as they approached the hotel. "It's been refreshing to talk about these plans without being laughed at." "I wouldn't dream of laughing at you, Katherine." Quentin's voice was serious. "I think you might be the wisest woman I know." The words struck her like a physical force. How long had it been since someone had called her wise instead of foolish? Over the next week, Quentin became a fixture at the Willow Creek Inn. Each day, he rode out to explore different parts of the surrounding area, often inviting Katherine to join him. In the evenings, they would sit in the hotel's small parlor, discussing his findings and her hopes for the town. Word spread quickly that a stranger with business interests was staying at Catherine's hotel. Soon, curious townspeople began finding excuses to stop by. "Miss Katherine," called Harvey Weber as he entered the lobby one afternoon. The town's wealthiest businessman had been trying to buy her property for years. "Thought I'd welcome our visitor properly." Katherine introduced the men, watching warily as they sized each other up. "Mr. Blackburn," Weber said with forced joviality, "I hope you're finding our little town agreeable. Though I must warn you, if you're here based on certain promises of railway development, you might want to reconsider your investment." Quentin's face revealed nothing. "Is that so?" Weber nodded sagely. Miss Aldridge's father filled her head with grand ideas, but the railway has rejected this route twice already. "Those were different companies with different priorities," Katherine interjected. Weber continued as if she hadn't spoken. "I'd hate to see another outsider lose money on Willow Creek's phantom prosperity. If you're looking for real opportunities, my office is always open." After Weber left, Katherine's hands shook with anger. "He's been trying to force me out for years. Wants to tear down the hotel and build a warehouse for his mercantile business." Quentin touched her arm gently. "Don't let him rattle you. Men like that feed on doubt." "But what if he's right?" Katherine whispered. "What if I am just clinging to a fool's hope?" "Then it's the most admirable foolishness I've ever seen." His hand remained on her arm, warm and reassuring. "But I don't believe that's the case." That night, unable to sleep, Katherine slipped downstairs to make herself tea. To her surprise, Quentin was in the kitchen, shirt sleeves rolled up as he studied papers spread across the table. "I'm sorry," she said, starting to retreat. "I didn't mean to interrupt." "You're not interrupting." He gestured to a chair. "I was just reviewing some calculations." Katherine hesitated, then joined him, aware that her night dress and wrapper were hardly proper attire for a business discussion. But something about the late hour and the quiet kitchen created an intimacy that made formal proprieties seem less important. "May I ask what you're calculating?" Quentin gathered the papers into a neat stack. "Just some projections. Land values, development costs, potential returns." "And," she prompted, "what's your assessment of Willow Creek's potential?" He studied her face for a moment. "Honestly, it depends entirely on that railway. Without it, this remains a dusty stop on a secondary trail. With it, everything changes," she finished. "That's what I've been trying to tell everyone. The question is whether the survey team will see what you see." Quentin leaned back in his chair. "Railway companies can be persuaded by many factors beyond the obvious geographical advantages." Katherine's stomach tightened. "You mean bribes?" "Sometimes, or political connections, competing interests," he shrugged. "The business world isn't always fair or logical. So even if the Ridge Passage is the best route, they might choose another for reasons that have nothing to do with what's right. It happens." His blue eyes were sympathetic. "But not always. Sometimes merit wins out." Katherine stared into her tea, the weight of doubt pressing down again. "I've staked everything on this, Quentin. Everything." He reached across the table and took her hand. The gesture was so unexpected that she didn't pull away. "I believe in what you're doing here, Katherine. More than that, I believe in you." The sincerity in his voice made her throat tighten. "Why? You barely know me." "I know enough." His thumb traced small circles on her palm, sending shivers up her arm. "I know you're fighting against impossible odds to preserve your father's legacy and secure your sister's future. I know you face ridicule daily yet never waver in your conviction. And I know that kind of courage is rare." Katherine looked down at their joined hands, afraid of what her face might reveal. "Thank you," she whispered. The next morning, Katherine woke to the sound of raised voices in the hotel lobby. She dressed quickly and hurried downstairs to find Quentin facing off with Sheriff Daniels and Harvey Weber. "What's happening here?" she demanded. Sheriff Daniels turned to her, expression grim. "Miss Aldridge, Mr. Weber has raised some concerns about your guest. Seems Mr. Blackburn here might not be who he claims to be." Katherine looked at Quentin, who met her gaze steadily. "What are you talking about?" Weber stepped forward, a satisfied smile on his face. "I took the liberty of telegraphing some contacts in Cheyenne. No one there has heard of a Quentin Blackburn representing Eastern investors." "That's because I never claimed to be from Cheyenne," Quentin said evenly. "And my business dealings are private, or non-existent," Weber retorted. "Sheriff, I believe this man is nothing more than a con artist preying on Miss Aldridge's well-known optimism." The sheriff looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Blackburn, I'm going to have to ask you to explain your business here, or I'll be forced to ask you to leave town." Katherine's heart was pounding. "This is ridiculous. Mr. Blackburn is my guest, and his business is his own affair." "It's all right, Katherine." Quentin's voice was calm. "I have nothing to hide." He reached into his jacket and withdrew a leather wallet from which he extracted an official-looking document. "My credentials, Sheriff." The sheriff took the paper, eyes widening as he read. "This is a Western Pacific Railway authorization." Weber snatched the document. "Let me see that." Katherine moved closer. "What does it say?" Quentin answered before either man could. "I'm a land acquisition agent for Western Pacific. I was sent ahead of the survey team to quietly assess property values and identify potential obstacles to development. You're with the railway." Katherine whispered, a mixture of hope and confusion washing over her. "I am." Quentin's eyes held hers. "I couldn't tell you initially because speculation drives up prices. It's standard procedure to maintain a cover until we're certain a route is viable." Weber's face had gone pale. "This has to be a forgery." "Telegraph the company headquarters if you don't believe me," Quentin replied. "Though I'd appreciate it if you'd keep this matter confidential for now. If word gets out that Western Pacific is seriously considering Willow Creek, land prices will skyrocket before we can secure the necessary rights of way." The sheriff took back the document, examining it carefully. "Seems genuine to me, Harvey. And it explains why he's been asking all those questions about the Ridge property." Weber's eyes narrowed. "If you're really with the railway, why stay at her hotel?" He jerked his head toward Katherine. "Why not approach me or the other business owners?" Quentin's expression remained neutral. "I stay where I please, Mr. Weber, and Miss Aldridge's establishment offered the privacy I required." He turned to the sheriff. "Now, if there are no charges against me, I have work to continue." The sheriff handed back the document. "No charges. Sorry for the disturbance, Mr. Blackburn." After the men left, Katherine stared at Quentin, emotions warring within her. "You lied to me." "I didn't lie, I just couldn't tell you everything." He stepped closer. "Katherine, I was sent to assess the viability of your father's route. The company had his old surveys, but they needed current validation. So all this time you were just, what? Using me for information?" Pain flashed in his eyes. "No, my job was to make an impartial assessment, getting to know you, seeing your conviction. That wasn't part of my assignment." Katherine wrapped her arms around herself. "What is your assessment then?" "Will the railway come?" Quentin hesitated. "My report will strongly recommend the Ridge Passage route, but the final decision rests with the board of directors." "And when were you planning to tell me who you really were?" "After the survey team arrived. I wanted to be sure before I gave you hope." He reached for her hand, but she stepped back. "I need time to process this," she said quietly. "You've been here under false pretenses, gaining my trust, She stopped, unwilling to articulate the growing feelings she'd developed. "Katherine, please, just give me some space." For the next 2 days, Katherine avoided being alone with Quentin. She was polite but distant, serving his meals and answering direct questions but volunteering nothing. At night, she lay awake, torn between hope that the railway might truly come and hurt that Quentin had concealed his identity. On the third morning, Leela confronted her in the kitchen. "You're being ridiculous, Katie." "Excuse me, Mr. Blackburn. Quentin has done nothing but help our cause. Thanks to him, the railway is seriously considering our town, and you're treating him like he betrayed you." "He lied to me, Leela. He did his job. And from what I can see, he's gone well beyond his duty because he cares about you." Leela put her hands on her hips. "Everyone in this town has called you a fool for years. He's the first person to believe in you, and you're pushing him away." Katherine sighed. "It's complicated. Only because you're making it so." Leela softened her tone. "He's leaving tomorrow, Katie. The survey team will be here next week, and he's riding to meet them in Cheyenne." "Tomorrow?" The news hit Katherine harder than she expected. "Yes, and he looks about as miserable as you do." Leela squeezed her sister's hand. "Don't let pride cost you something that could be wonderful." That evening, Katherine found Quentin on the hotel's back porch, watching the sunset paint the distant ridge in gold and purple. He turned at the sound of her footsteps. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he said quietly. "Your father chose well." Katherine leaned against the railing beside him. "Leela tells me you're leaving tomorrow. I need to file my report in person and guide the survey team back. Will you return with them?" "That depends." He turned to face her fully. "On whether there's a reason for me to come back." Katherine's heart beat faster. "What would constitute a reason?" "You," he said simply. "Katherine, I came to Willow Creek to assess a railway route. I didn't expect to find a woman whose determination and vision would captivate me completely. I thought I was just the foolish dreamer who happened to own the ridge property you needed. You were never that." He took her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. "The first day on that ridge, watching you describe your father's plans with such passion and intelligence, I knew you were exceptional. Every day since has only confirmed that." "Even though I've been avoiding you for days?" she asked, a small smile finally breaking through. "Even then." "I deserved your anger." His thumb traced the same circles on her palm that had sent shivers through her that night in the kitchen. "But I'm hoping I might also deserve your forgiveness." "There's nothing to forgive," she admitted. "You were doing your job. I was just hurt that what felt special between us might have been strategic." Quentin stepped closer. "There was nothing strategic about this," he murmured, and then he was kissing her, one hand cradling her face while the other pulled her gently against him. Katherine melted into his embrace, all doubts washing away in the warmth of his kiss. When they finally parted, both breathless, she rested her forehead against his chest. "What happens now?" she whispered. "Now I ride to Cheyenne and make the strongest possible case for the Ridge Passage." He tilted her face up to his. "And then I come back to the wisest woman I know, and we see what the future holds. People will talk. They'll say I compromised myself to get the railway contract." Quentin smiled. "Let them talk. We know the truth." "And what is the truth, Mr. Blackburn?" "That I fell in love with a visionary who refused to give up on her dreams, even when everyone called her a fool." He kissed her again, softly. "And that I intend to stand beside her when those dreams come true." 1 month later, Katherine stood on the ridge beside Quentin, watching as the Western Pacific Survey team drove stakes into the ground, marking the future path of the railway tunnel. Below in Willow Creek, a flurry of activity had transformed the sleepy town. New buildings were under construction, land was changing hands, and the Willow Creek Inn was fully booked for the first time in years. "It's really happening," she said, still hardly able to believe it. "Just as you always said it would." Quentin slipped an arm around her waist. "How does it feel to be proven right?" "Vindicating," she admitted with a laugh. "Though I notice Weber and the others who called me a fool now claim they always supported the railway idea." "Of course they do," Quentin chuckled. "No one likes to admit they lacked vision." Katherine turned in his arms to face him. "You never lacked vision. You saw what was possible here. You saw me." "I still see you." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "And I see our future if you'll have me." Katherine's breath caught. "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" Quentin reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Katherine Aldridge, they called you a fool for hoping, but you proved to be the wisest woman I've ever known. I love your determination, your loyalty, and your unwavering faith in what others couldn't see. Will you marry me and build this future together?" Inside the box was a delicate gold ring with a small but perfect diamond. Katherine's eyes filled with tears as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, the sound of hammers and saws from the town below mingled with birdsong from the ridge above, a symphony of dreams becoming reality. "You know," Quentin said as they walked hand in hand back toward their horses, "in 50 years, when Willow Creek is a thriving city, people will talk about the visionary woman who believed in it when no one else would." Katherine smiled, squeezing his hand. "And the railway man who called her wise when everyone else called her a fool." "The wisest woman I know," he corrected, kissing her softly. "Yesterday, today, and always." By the following spring, the tunnel through the ridge was nearly complete, and the town of Willow Creek had tripled in size. The Willow Creek Inn, now expanded and renovated, stood as a testament to Katherine's perseverance. And on a perfect May morning, in the hotel's garden with the ridge visible in the distance, Katherine Aldridge became Katherine Blackburn, exchanging vows with the man who had seen wisdom where others had seen only foolish dreams. Their story became legend in Willow Creek, how a stubborn woman's hope had transformed a dying town, and how a stranger had recognized her vision when all others mocked it. And as the years passed and the railway brought prosperity beyond even Katherine's imaginings, no one ever again called her a fool for hoping. Instead, they pointed to her as proof that sometimes those who dream the impossible dreams are the wisest among us.